The Pittsburgh Pirates had a golden opportunity to get a sweep in Minute Maid Park against Houston, but they fell short. We're going to discuss that and so much more on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every single day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter right there at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. If you want to go to PNC Park this weekend to see Luis Ortiz, Paul Skeens, or Mitch Keller pitch, make sure you go use Game Time and download the Game Time app today. And I'm giving you a code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. So go see some Pirates baseball in the middle of August, where Pirates baseball actually matters again in August. We are in the middle of a competitive stretch, and we'll be talking about that on the show later. But last night, the Pittsburgh Pirates had a chance to get a sweep of the Houston Astros in Minute Maid Park, a series that, coming off of that Arizona series, scared a lot of people, including me. The Astros have played a lot better baseball than they did at the beginning of the year. They've kind of turned the page a little bit and become the Astros of old that we know, with Altuve and Alvarez kind of leading the charge in Houston. But the Pittsburgh Pirates got the better of them in those first two games, and they were two very well-played games by this Pittsburgh Pirates team. I know we weren't really talking a lot about on-field stuff over the past couple of days with the trade deadline, among other things, but the Pirates won 5-3 on Monday. Big game from them, for Michael A. Taylor getting that massive ninth inning comeback for the second night in a row. Michael A. Taylor struck again on Tuesday in a big 6-2 win. And then last night, they put up 4 runs in the top of the second inning. They took an early 4-0 lead against Framber Valdez, who is definitely a formidable opponent. Framber Valdez, one of the better pitchers in all of baseball, has had a pretty weird year this year, though. 3.56 ERA, still very impressive, but not a Framber Valdez type season that you usually would expect from him. And then the rails kind of just fell off, and the Pirates ended up losing this one 5-4, even though they out-hit the Astros by 5 hits in this game with 9 hits to 4. And the story in this game, unfortunately, has to be directed at none other than Oneil Cruz. Oneil Cruz in this game just was not good. He was not good in this series. He was not good in this game in particular, where he had 3 errors on the night for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I believe all of them resulted in runs. Just not a good game at all for this Pittsburgh Pirates team. He had a throwing error, he had a fielding error, and another throwing error in this one. I think the one that was spotlighted the most would be the one that you see as the thumbnail of this episode, when Bryan Reynolds, a ball that was clearly for Bryan Reynolds, Oneil Cruz, I think, was just trying to kind of redeem himself from the throwing error that he had earlier in the game, and it was just a mistake. And these are things with Oneil Cruz that he has to learn. I saw a lot of people last night kind of suggesting that they should have sat him down, but there's 2 sides to this. You sit him down, and the mentality is, for him, I would assume, that, now anytime I make an error, I'm going to be benched, and eventually that's just going to be what's going to be going on in his mind all the time, and you don't want to build that up. And this, again, is the first full year that Oneil Cruz is getting work at the shortstop position. He's second in Major League Baseball in errors, just behind Elly De La Cruz, and it's been kind of an up and down sequence with him at the shortstop position. There's some times where you see Oneil Cruz playing that position. He looks very natural. He looks very good playing the position. He no doubt has the arm to play the shortstop position. He's saved infield singles plenty of times from that position so far this year with the arm talent that he possesses over there at the number 6 spot in the field. But then there's times like last night where he has that botched throwing error. He has a fielding error. He has another throwing error. And it ended up truthfully losing the game. And if those errors don't happen, you're on the show today, listening to me discuss a series sweep where the Pirates then go into PNC Park this weekend against the Arizona Diamondbacks with all kinds of momentum. Now they come off of a grueling loss. I mean, this loss just stinks. It really does. And when you have an opportunity to sweep a team like the Houston Astros, you take it. And this was a blown opportunity. It really was. And especially in the middle of a race right now in the wild card where you're right there, hence why they bought and why they got guys like Bryan Cruz and Jalen Beeks, who we'll discuss in the next part of the show. These are the games that you're going to look back on in September and say, man, we really should have won that one. And the Pirates have had a lot of games like that this year where they jump out to early leads. They look like they're playing really well, and then the wheels just kind of come off. And that's what happened last night. As far as the rest of the game is concerned, Jake Woodford, really good outing from him, I think. He pitched 5 innings, did not allow an earned run in this one, albeit he did allow 3 runs on 2 hits. 3 strikeouts to his credit against a very good Houston Astros offense. I don't think that this one really should have any blame on Jake Woodford whatsoever. It was his Pirates debut. He looked very good in this debut as well. He wasn't obviously overly dominant, but he wasn't overmatched either. He looked like he was very good in this outing, and he did a job. I tweeted that out last night that he had a job to do, and he did his job. And that's all you could really ask out of him. Colin Holderman did get the loss in this one, gave up a solo shot to Mauricio Dubon when the game was still in the Pirates' hands. They were still up 4-3, but Dubon comes on and launches one over the left field wall and makes it 5-4. Hunter Stratton and Kyle Nicholas came on to also pitch scoreless outings. So it is an interesting dynamic for all of this because the Pirates, again, still won this series. They still went 3-3 on a road trip against the Diamondbacks and the Houston Astros, which is very impressive. I mean, truthfully, especially after how that Arizona Diamondback series started. I mean, it looked like the rails might have just completely fallen off of this team, but they came back on Sunday, got a massive win against the Arizona Diamondbacks in a 9th inning comeback. They get another 9th inning comeback on Monday. They dominated the Astros on Tuesday, and now you're going into a series against the Diamondbacks this weekend, again, where right now the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we'll dive into this a lot more later, are 2.5 back of this Arizona team. So if they can find a way to win this series, that would be big. And they're still only 2.5 back right now of the wild card, which is currently possessed by those Arizona Diamondbacks. But again, games like last night are going to be frustrating. I get it. O'Neal Cruz, I think today, an off day is perfect for him after this series. It was just not a good series for O'Neal Cruz really at all, either at the plate or in the field. So I do think that you are happy that O'Neal Cruz has an off day, and especially coming off a loss like this, I think it's good overall that the team has an off day today as well, because you go into this Arizona series kind of with a fresh mind coming off an off day. You come back from the West Coast, you come back from losing a series to this Arizona Diamondbacks team last weekend. So it's kind of a chance for redemption. And we're going to discuss that so much more on tomorrow's episode about that series, about the chance for redemption for this team against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And then after that, you have another big series against San Diego, another team that is right there in the middle of the wild card race. So yeah, these kind of losses sting, but the Pittsburgh Pirates decided they wanted to go out and buy some pieces at the deadline. Go watch my live show if you haven't already, where I discuss all of it. And 2 of them debuted yesterday in the form of Bryan Cruz and Jalen Beeks. We're going to discuss those guys and discuss all the moves they made and what those additions offer the Pirates in 2024 and beyond right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code MLB. Because when you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate in the hot weather with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Blast off with the iconic summer flavors of Popsicle Firecracker, a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors. You can find all your favorite flavors on the Liquid IV website, from acai berry and lemon lime to even pina colada. Tear, pour, live more. 1 stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Powered by Live Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get $20 off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Shop all of your plumbing, HVAC, and electrical needs at supplyhouse.com because their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, you can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com, which features a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts. And order at SupplyHouse.com right now in just a few clicks. And thank you to Liquid IV and Supply House for being wonderful sponsors of the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you also check out Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 streaming channel brought to you by Locked On YouTube and Amazon Fire TV. And also, after your first listen, Locked On Pirates, make Locked On MLB your second listen of the day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where Paul Francis Sullivan is giving you all the news and analysis that you need on everything going on alongside Major League Baseball. Listen to Locked On Steelers with Christopher Carter, who's covering training camp. Listen to Hunter Hodes at Locked On Penguins, who's covering everything going on in the hockey offseason. And Nick Farbaugh of Locked On Pitt, who is obviously ramping up for college football, which is back this month. As for baseball, though, the Pittsburgh Pirates trade deadline has come and gone. I had a wonderful story about all of the moves on Steel City Pirates where you could find that. Very nice piece that I feel like I wrote, a little bit of a humble brag there. But we saw two of those moves debut last night for the Pittsburgh Pirates in the form of Bryan De La Cruz from the Miami Marlins and Jalen Beeks from the Colorado Rockies. Bryan De La Cruz got off to a good start, has a very, very good single in the game last night, did a very good job getting on base as the number 4 hitter. And I think the number 4 spot is a good spot for him. Now, albeit it was against a lefty last night, so I don't know if that's something you'll continue to see. I would probably in the future, against right-handed hitters to see kind of a Kutch, Reynolds, Cruz, Tellez, Bryan De La Cruz top 5. And then when Nick Gonzalez comes back, I think he'd be a phenomenal 5 or 6 hitter. So expect Bryan De La Cruz to be between that 4 and 6 spot throughout the rest of the season. But outside of that, he did have another hit as well in this game. OPS at a 709. He did have 2 strikeouts. And I talked about that on that live show, that the one thing that's kind of worrisome about Bryan De La Cruz is the swing and miss. The swing and miss right now is in the bottom 25 percentile in all of baseball, 26% strikeout rate, 29% whiff rate, and a 32% chase rate. So you kind of worry about that a little bit. But as I mentioned as well about Bryan De La Cruz already upon his acquisition, the guy has an expected slugging that's among the best in baseball, a barrel rate at 11% that you'll definitely see play, a hard hit rate at 43.2%. So this is a guy that when he gets contact, he's going to hit the ball well. You're just going to have to live with the swing and miss. That's just what you're going to live with in a guy in Bryan De La Cruz, who also I think is going to be just fine defensively in right field. I don't think right field's going to be too much of a problem for him. I mentioned it on my live show also that Bryan De La Cruz is a guy that has an arm, man. And albeit the -7 ounce above average is worrisome, I know a lot of people might look at that and immediately pen him as a bad defensive option. But I think the bat will outplay the defense more than it has to. And truthfully, I think defensively, he'll be just fine. As for what I would expect from Bryan De La Cruz the rest of the year, I do think that he brings a valuable power element to that middle part of the lineup. Really, it's only been Rowdy Tellez who's been offering much power. You're seeing it from Joey Bart a little bit too, but Nick Gonzalez isn't, I mean, let's be honest, Nick Gonzalez has gotten really unlucky this year because he has been hitting balls to the warning track a lot. He doesn't bring the home run numbers, though. Connor Joe's not doing it. Palacios isn't doing it, who's now on the 10-day IL. You're not going to get that from G1 Bay, albeit they got it from Michael A. Taylor 2 out of these last 3 games. You're not going to get it there either. So outside of Bryan Reynolds and Cruz and Kutch occasionally and Rowdy Tellez, they haven't really had a power element, and that's what Bryan De La Cruz has been brought here to do. IKF is here. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa did not make his debut last night, but he was in the clubhouse, and he will hopefully be available for this weekend series. And he's already kind of caught the hearts of Pirates fans because Alex from MLB.com spoke to him, and he said that his goal in Toronto was to chase a batting title, and now his goal in Pittsburgh is to win a World Series. So that's a win in my book. They got IKF for Charles McAdoo. Kind of sucked to move on from a guy like Charles McAdoo because he was one of the more prominent minor league bats the Pirates have in their system. Yet, if you're going to get a guy in IKF who currently has a 758 OPS and 257 at-bats with 7 homers and 33 RBIs and is a for-real MLB hitter, on top of that with defensive versatility, I think you take that move 10 out of 10 times. I mean, truthfully, IKF is going to bring offensive prowess to this lineup. He's in the middle of his best offensive season of his career. He can play just about anywhere. If you need him to play second base over Triolo, you got it. If you need him to play the outfield, he can do it. If you need him to play third base on a day where Ke'Bryan Hayes might need a day off, or if you just think his bat's going to be better than what Ke'Bryan Hayes is offering right now, hint, hint, it is, then you can do that. And he also brings Gold Glove defense to the plate as well. So I think IKF is going to have a really, really, really big impact on this team, not only offensively, but defensively as well. And he brings a veteran presence that has been there, done that in this league. And I think that was a massive move. And I really think that throughout the rest of this year, IKF has a chance to prove that the Pirates should bring him back in 2025. Now, that's obviously something you want to worry about later, but he is available to come back in 2025. So is he a guy that you want to bring back as a defensive versatile defender? I mean, I would, especially if he's going to come back and hit like this. And when you have the best on-base percentage you've ever had in your career at 338, that's what the Pirates wanted. They wanted offensive production, and they got it. As for another guy that debuted yesterday, they get Jalen Beeks from the Colorado Rockies, who has had success in the past as a Tampa Bay Ray. Not as much success as a Colorado Rocky. He did allow 1 earned run last night. That was because of the Colin Holderman home run that was surrendered to Mauricio Dubon. But once Josh Fleming got designated for assignment and Ryan Borucki and his rehab were kind of slowed and stopped. And just to add to this, I don't think we're going to see Ryan Borucki pitch this year, like at all. It kind of started a domino effect. One, a lot of people were thinking Aroldis Chapman, especially with this relievers market, might have been moved. You can't really move him, though, because he's been your only reliable lefty out of the pen this year, and they then needed to make a move for another one. They get one in the form of Jalen Beeks, who going into the game last night had a 4.74 ERA and 49 1/3 innings pitched. But you're looking at a guy that does very well against lefties. And in 2022, not even 2 years ago, he had a 2.8 ERA and 61 innings with the Tampa Bay Rays. So I think the Pirates are kind of hoping that's what they get down the stretch here, because you have to think with Jalen Beeks, especially with any reliever that you're acquiring, you're hoping that they just get hot and can be really good down the stretch of the season, because that's what you're bringing them in for. Jalen Beeks is not a long-term option, I don't think, for this team. He may very well end up being one, but what you're really hoping is that he eventually comes in and just goes on a tear and becomes a very good left-handed option outside of Aroldis Chapman to bring out of the bullpen, because you want to keep Aroldis Chapman in those high leverage, low end of the game scenarios. And you can't really do that if he's your only lefty in the bullpen. Jalen Beeks gives them versatility to do that. You saw who he entered against yesterday. He entered against Yordan Alvarez. I think you might see him again in this series against Arizona starting tomorrow against guys like Corbin Carroll and maybe even a Ketel Marte, who bats switch hitter, but has interesting splits against lefties. So He brings versatility to the bullpen. You got a little taste of him last night. We'll hope that he can get hot down the stretch. You look at some of the other moves I talked about. Billy Cook for Patrick Riley, prospect for prospect move. They move on from a strength, which is their prospect depth that they have throughout the system, to get another outfielder in Billy Cook, who has had success in AAA. You also get Josh Walker from the Mets, left-hander like Jalen Beeks, who can offer some depth in the bullpen. And at the end of the day, you also got Martin Perez traded to San Diego for a guy they really liked, an 18-year-old pitcher in Ronaldus Jimenez. And then Nick York for Quinn Priester. I think Nick York is going to surprise a lot of Pirates fans when he eventually makes his debut here, and he gives them depth behind Jared Triolo. You obviously still have Leover Peguero, Nick Gonzalez, G1 Bay, who all play that middle infield. I think Nick York could even be flirted with as an outfielder as well. So that's another trading a strength for something that you need in the form of him as well. So those are the moves. We got a taste of Bryan De La Cruz and Jalen Beeks. I'd expect that we get a taste of IKF this weekend against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And with this series against the Arizona Diamondbacks coming up, competitive baseball is back. And I'm going to tell you why it's great and why the Pittsburgh Pirates could stay competitive all the way through the end of the season next on Locked On Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. If you want to go to PNC Park this weekend, you could see Luis Ortiz, you could see Mitch Keller, or you could even see Paul Skeens with a drone show thrown in there this weekend at PNC Park. And if you think about it last minute, well, you can do that with Game Time, because you could save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The lowest price guarantee allows you to get a credit of 110% of the difference if you find tickets cheaper somewhere else. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and your ticket is always covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off, and download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And welcome back to the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates, everybody, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. And folks, your Pittsburgh Pirates are right in the middle of a wild card race in the National League. They are on pace right now in the month of July to have a very good month of July, by the way. We look at the rest of the month for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Obviously, the series against Arizona coming up. Then you get San Diego at home as well during the week. The Dodgers in San Diego again, Seattle, Texas, and then some big series against Cincinnati and Chicago, and then Cleveland to round out the month. So definitely a murderer's row kind of that just goes through the rest of the season, but that's what competitive baseball feels like, folks. These one-run games are going to continue to happen. These are games that you're going to have to get used to. These are the games that you're going to continue to see for this Pittsburgh Pirates team, because they are a competitive baseball team. They can pitch with anybody. I mean, you look at this weekend with Luis Ortiz, Mitch Keller, and Paul Skeens as the probable starters, and you think to yourself, Pirates can win 2 out of 3 there. You think to yourself, man, the pitching staff can get us there if the offense can just back them up. And that's been the story. This pitching staff has been the reason why the Pirates are 55-53. They have been the reason why the Pirates were buyers at the deadline, and they have been the reason why the Pirates can be a wild card team in the National League. You look at the Atlanta Braves. They've stumbled a little bit, but they're still at that top wild card spot. The San Diego Padres went out and bought considerably to strengthen their bullpen, and we'll be getting Fernando Tatis Jr. back soon. The Arizona Diamondbacks, we saw last weekend, are a very good team. The New York Mets are a team the Pirates struggled with this year, and the Cardinals. The Pirates finally got a good taste of the Cardinals and finally beat them in a series not too long ago. So this is going to continue to be a tough race. And I'm not saying that I'm guaranteeing the Pirates make the playoffs whatsoever, but it's nice to finally have them back in this spot. I've done this show since October of 2020, folks, and all of those years around this time, the Pirates were probably sellers or selling, and the vibes were just not good. The Pirates were usually out of it by then. The division was out of the question. Now you even look at the division, and the Pirates sit just 6 games back of Milwaukee and a game back of St. Louis. So the division even could be in play here if Milwaukee stumbles anywhere and the Pirates go on another win streak. And I think that that's something that you could see at some point. And that last series at home against Milwaukee in September could be very important. Now, I know that I'm looking very forward and I'm being very positive, but you also have to consider the Pirates just got Bailey Falter back, and he turned in a great start against Houston on Tuesday. They're going to be getting Jared Jones back here in a couple weeks to really strengthen that rotation again. You're going to be getting Nick Gonzalez back hopefully sometime in September, maybe the end of August, and that'll help you out with your lineup once again. But competitive baseball is back, folks. And I know that it's been a while. I know that it's kind of hard to even take that in a little bit, but your team bought. They went and got Bryan De La Cruz. They went and got IKF. They went and got Jalen Beeks. They got Josh Walker. They got Nick York. They got Billy Cook. And they have things on the way. And the thing that I really liked so much is that they went out and bought pieces that they knew they needed in Bryan De La Cruz and IKF and stuff like that, but they kept the future intact. And I think that's where now the Pirates are in a competitive window. This is the competitive window that we've all been waiting for under the Ben Cherington regime. This is the spot now where all of this is starting to kind of come together. And I know that it got really scary there on the trade deadline where we were all wondering if Ben Cherington was going to make a move or not. Well, he did. And the Pirates are here. They're in a competitive spot. You're going to have these one-run games. The Pirates are going to have frustrating losses. They're going to have games they win that you probably think they shouldn't have won. But that's the story. That's how they're going to do this. And no matter what happens here near the end of the season, I want to just say this throughout the rest of the year, that this is going to be fun no matter what, because the Pirates have a legitimate shot of being a playoff team and bringing Bucktober back to Pittsburgh. That is something we have not been able to say since 2018. Now, they didn't make the playoffs in 2018. They only played 161 games, too, because they didn't have to play that last game, finished 82-79. I think this year compares to that year a lot, where you're starting to see the pieces come together in Nick Gonzalez and Paul Skeens and Jared Jones and Luis Ortiz and Bryan Reynolds and O'Neal Cruz and Nick Gonzalez. You're starting to see those pieces come together. And then next year, you're going to be thinking about Thomas Harrington and Bubba Chandler and Termar Johnson as potential options that can come in and not be expected to be stars right away, but just be complementary pieces to the core that the Pirates already have. And that's what I think is going on. This season compares a lot to 2018 as much as it compares a lot to 2012. You're starting to see the seeds planted. The Pirates just have to let the garden grow and bloom into a hopeful playoff spot. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Find the show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms because it is free and available to you every weekday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. Have a phenomenal rest of your Thursday. We'll be back tomorrow discussing the Arizona Diamondbacks series, Luis Ortiz, Mitch Keller, Paul Skeens, and so much more. But until then, see you on the flip side.